There are 25 of them in the United Kingdom. 25 people who have done something most of us have never considered possible. They each hold an individual savings account, an ISA, worth over £1 million. Not a pension, not a property portfolio, a single ISA, and every penny of growth inside it, completely free from tax. Forever. The HMRC figures are real. The accounts exist. And the question you should be asking is not how much they earned. It's how the tax system let them keep all of it. Because here's the thing most people in this country get wrong. They think an ISA is a savings account, a place to park money, a slightly better version of a Halifax current account. And that misunderstanding is quietly costing them a fortune every single year. This is the full story of ISAs, what they actually are, how they actually work, and the decisions that separate people who use them to build real wealth from people who use them to feel financially responsible while barely beating inflation. Let's start at the beginning, because the basics matter, and most people don't know them as well as they think. An ISA is a wrapper. Think of it like a box. You put your money inside that box, and everything that happens to your money inside the box, interest it earns, dividends it receives, gains it makes, is completely free from income tax and capital gains tax. You don't declare it to HMRC. It doesn't appear on a tax return. The government simply cannot touch it. Each tax year, which runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April, every UK adult gets a fresh allowance of £20,000. That's how much you can put into ISAs in any single year. It doesn't roll over. If the 5th of April arrives and you haven't used it, it's gone. That allowance resets, and you never get those years back. There are 4 main types of adult ISA. A cash ISA, which works like a savings account inside the tax-free wrapper. A stocks and shares ISA, which lets you invest in funds, shares, and ETFs while sheltering all your returns from tax. An innovative finance ISA, which covers peer-to-peer lending. And a lifetime ISA, which we'll come back to, because it deserves its own chapter. It has a bonus most people don't fully understand, and a trap that cost UK savers over £100 million last year alone. You can split your £20,000 across as many of these types as you like. You can put £5,000 in a cash ISA, £11,000 in a stocks and shares ISA, and £4,000 in a lifetime ISA. You can even open multiple accounts of the same type in the same tax year, a rule that changed in April 2024. What you cannot do is exceed $20,000 total. That's your ceiling, and HMRC monitors it closely. Now, here is where the story gets interesting. Most people in the UK who have an ISA have a cash ISA. It's the first thing banks recommend. It's the easiest thing to open, and for decades it has been presented as the sensible, responsible choice. But sensible and optimal are not the same thing. Since ISAs launched in 1999, analysis from AJ Bell shows that £1,000 put into the average cash ISA would today be worth around £2,079. The same £1,000 put into the average UK stocks ISA would be worth around £3,787. That's not a small difference. That's nearly double. And if you'd invested in a global index fund instead of average UK equities, the gap would be wider still. The numbers become genuinely uncomfortable when you run them at scale. Moneyfacts analysis found that every £100 put into a cash ISA since 2010 grew to approximately £130. The same £100 in a stocks and shares ISA grew to $233 over 15 years. In an account that exists in both cases, the only difference is what went inside the wrapper. The average annual return on a cash ISA over that period? Around 1.79%. The average annual return on a stocks and shares ISA? Around 6.79%. Inflation over the same period averaged roughly 2.92%. That means cash ISA savers, on average, lost real purchasing power. They had more pounds at the end, but those pounds bought less. None of this means cash ISAs are useless. They are not. They are the right home for money you might need within the next 1 to 3 years. Emergency funds, planned purchases, short-term goals. The tax-free wrapper still matters there. particularly as frozen income tax thresholds push more people into higher-rate tax brackets, cutting their personal savings allowance from £1,000 to just £500.
But if you are 30 years old with money you don't plan to touch for 2 decades, a cash ISA is not a wealth-building vehicle. It is a wealth-preserving vehicle, and there's a significant difference. Which brings us to the stocks and shares ISA, and the question most beginners ask: what do you actually put inside one? The honest answer is that it depends on your goals, your timeline, and your attitude to risk. Investments can fall in value as well as rise, and no return is guaranteed. But for those willing to invest for 5 years or more, the range of options inside a stocks and shares ISA is genuinely broad. Individual company shares, exchange-traded funds, investment trusts, ready-made portfolios offered by platforms like AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown, and Vanguard UK. Many new investors start with a global index fund. The FTSE Global All Cap, for example, holds thousands of companies across the world in a single fund. You're not betting on one company or one country. You're buying a slice of the entire global economy, and if that grows over time, as it historically has, so does your money, all inside a wrapper where the government receives nothing from your gains. The compounding effect matters enormously here. When your investments grow, the growth itself generates further growth. Over long periods, this snowball effect is one of the most powerful forces in personal finance. And the ISA wrapper means none of that compounding is interrupted by a tax bill. Every pound that would have gone to HMRC stays in your account, working for you. This is not abstract. The 25 ISA millionaires in the UK didn't get there by accident. They used the annual allowance, consistently, year after year. They let compound growth do its work, and they did it inside a structure specifically designed to protect their returns from tax. Now, the Lifetime ISA. If there is one product in the UK that is both genuinely valuable and genuinely misunderstood, it is the Lifetime ISA, the LISA. And the misunderstanding has consequences. Real financial consequences that caught people so badly last year that HMRC collected over £102 million in withdrawal penalties, up from £75 million the year before. Here is how it works. If you are between 18 and 39 years old, you can open a Lifetime ISA and save up to £4,000 per tax year into it. For every £4 you save, the government adds 1. That's a 25% bonus, paid monthly. Save the full £4,000, and you receive £1,000 from the government, on top of your own money, in the same tax year. There are 2 situations where you can use this money without penalty. First, buying your first home, provided the property costs £450,000 or less, and you use a mortgage. Second, retirement, from the age of 60 onwards. That's it. Those are the only 2 exits that don't cost you. If you withdraw for any other reason, redundancy, a change of plan, a property that costs more than the cap, the government takes back its bonus, and then some. The penalty is 25% of the full amount withdrawn. Because the charge is on the total, not just the bonus, you lose the government's contribution and 6.25% of your own money. You can leave with less than you put in. Last year, Treasury Select Committee MPs reviewed the LISA and concluded its design was fundamentally flawed. Rising house prices have pushed many first-time buyers in London and the South East above the £450,000 cap, a threshold set in 2017 that has never been adjusted for inflation. The government has now announced a consultation to replace the LISA with a new first-time buyer ISA in April 2028, which would remove the withdrawal penalty altogether. For now, the current rules remain in force. So what should you do if you're eligible? If you are confident the property you want is below the cap, confident in your timeline, and you plan to use a mortgage, the 25% government bonus is a genuinely exceptional return that's hard to find elsewhere. But open it with clarity of purpose. The LISA is not a flexible savings vehicle. It is a locked box with a very specific key. One final point that catches people out: your LISA contributions count toward your overall £20,000 annual ISA allowance. Put $4,000 into a Lifetime ISA, and you have $16,000 left for everything else.
There are also a few rules about ISAs that come up less often, but that are worth knowing clearly. Transferring an ISA to a new provider never counts against your allowance. You're moving existing money, not adding new money. But if you transfer within the same tax year, use the official ISA transfer process. If you withdraw and redeposit, that withdrawal counts as new money, and you may accidentally exceed your limit. If your spouse or civil partner dies, you can inherit the value of their ISA through what's called an additional permitted subscription. This is a one-off extra allowance, on top of your own $20,000, equal to the value of their ISA at the time of their death. The tax-free status transfers. ISAs do not protect you from inheritance tax. If your estate is large enough to be subject to IHT, your ISA will form part of it. The wrapper disappears at death for IHT purposes. For very large ISA pots, this is worth planning around, but it only becomes relevant at a level most people are not yet at.
And from April 2027, a significant change is coming. The cash element of the ISA allowance will be reduced from £20,000 to £12,000 per year for anyone under 65. The allowance for stocks and shares ISAs remains at $20,000. If you want to use the full $20,000 annual allowance from 2027 onwards, at least $8,000 of it will need to go into investments. This is a deliberate policy choice by the government to encourage more people into the stock market, and it will affect anyone who uses their full ISA allowance exclusively in cash.
So what does all of this mean in practice?
If you are someone who has never opened an ISA, the single most important move is to open one today. The allowance doesn't roll over, and the compounding that comes from starting early cannot be recovered later. Even a small amount matters. The value of a stocks and shares ISA isn't just about what you put in today, it's about how long it has to grow. If you already have a cash ISA and a long investment horizon, it's worth asking whether that money is working as hard as it could. You can transfer a cash ISA to a stocks and shares ISA without it counting as new money. The tax-free history of that pot moves with it. If you are between 18 and 39 and saving for a first home below the £450,000 threshold, a lifetime ISA deserves serious consideration. Open it, even if you can only put in a small amount. The 12-month clock for penalty-free property withdrawal starts from the day you open it, not the day you start saving seriously. And if you have children, they have their own ISA. A junior ISA allows up to £9,000 per tax year, completely separate from your own £20,000 limit. Open at birth if possible. By the time they turn 18, the compounding on consistent contributions across nearly 2 decades can be significant. The £20,000 annual ISA allowance has been frozen at the same level since 2017. It will remain frozen until at least 2030. That means inflation is slowly reducing its real value. Every year you don't use it, you're not just losing the allowance. You're losing it at a time when it buys more than it will in future years. But the more fundamental point is this. The ISA is one of the most generous tax structures available to ordinary people in the United Kingdom. No other country offers quite the same unlimited, permanent, tax-free shelter on investment returns at this scale. The 25 ISA millionaires sitting at the top of the HMRC data didn't discover a loophole. They used a legal, publicly available account, the same one available to you, and they started as early as possible. The allowance resets every 6th of April. What you do with it is up to you. This script is intended for educational purposes and reflects UK tax rules and HMRC guidance current as of June 2026. ISA rules and tax legislation can change. Nothing in this script constitutes financial advice. Viewers should seek independent financial advice before making investment decisions. The value of investments can fall as well as rise, and past performance is not a guarantee of future returns.